Okay, so now we've talked about the investments. Let's talk about partnership. And when partnership is probably going to be a better opportunity or a better situation than trying to pursue capital. Because we've actually touched on it in some cases where, some people, their natural abilities aren't going to be on business planning. They may be the person that knows how to be able to address the invention or within it, whatever innovation they want to be able to bring to market, but they may not be good on the financial side, or they may not have certain things, or they may be good on the financial side, but they're not good on the execution side of doing all
Mm,
the rest of it. So
right,
when it comes to partnerships, sometimes the right move is avoiding the money altogether, but then finding the person that actually complements what it is that you want to be able to accomplish. So
right.
when does a strategic partnership replace the need for funding, and what earns you that kind of leverage to be able to pursue it?
Yeah. So I don't know when necessarily it replaces the need for funding. I think partnerships should be gone after at all times, right?
Hmm.
From the
Okay.
start of your business until you exit from the business, you should always be looking for opportunities to partner with other organizations, right? Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do through a partnership is bring more value to the customers you serve, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you should look at, who who do I serve? How can I improve what I provide them through a partnership? Because that
Hmm.
will lead you to who would a natural partner be. So, uh, there's a book called Co-opetition that was written by a Yale and a Harvard professor um,
Okay.
that talks about this, and it's probably the best book I've ever read about creating partnerships. But it talks about it. It introduces a concept called the value net. So
Hmm.
if you think of a circle, and in the middle of the circle is your company, and then there are four circles kind of orbiting your circle. And those four circles are one circle is complementors, one circle is suppliers, one circle is uh, customers, and one circle is competitors. You should be looking at all times in your business to try to have as many partners in each of those circles that surround your
Oh,
circle as
definitely.
possible,
Yeah.
right? And because each partnership is bringing more value to the customers you serve, right? So
Hmm.
think about with complementers. If someone has a product or service that complements yours, by bundling your product with their product, you've created an elevated or better solution for the customers you serve. Think about suppliers. If I'm partnering with suppliers, one of the benefits of partnering with a supplier is the supplies that I'm purchasing from them. Hopefully, I'll get at a better rate, which means my
Yeah.
prices go down, which
Yeah.
means I charge less for my services for the customers I serve. Again, greater benefit for my customer. Um, Customers, you know, um, again, now it's like this parent-child relationship again, where if I'm partnering with my customer, you know, not only is my customer now because they have a partnership, we have a vested interest in my success, they're going to buy probably more product or services from me, and for the entire duration of the partnership, they every time they um, that I sell something, they benefit from it because of the partnership. And so they want to introduce me to their peers so that
Yeah.
they can buy because
Excuse me.
they indirectly benefit from the sales that I make because of their partnership with me. Same
Hmm.
thing with competitors. I'll give you an example. I did this with, so my last company was a private cloud computing business.
Hmm.
And I mentioned earlier that we purchased all of our servers from Dell Computer. Dell Computer was a competitor because, we were both in the information technology industry. But when I started my company and we did, like $150,000 in year one, you know, and Dell being a multi-billion dollar Fortune 500 company did not view me as a competitor. If they wanted to
Right.
squash me and put me out of business, they could have easily done it. And, just with one heavy breath, and, but benefit was Dell, as a Fortune 500 company, if you've worked for a Fortune 500 company before, or any large organization, you know that there's tons of bureaucracy. It's hard to get
Yes.
anything done because of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So I would use this analogy of telling people that when I had, and so before I get to that, the benefit of the small business is that you're nimble. You don't have to ask people for permission to do anything. So you actually, there's a perfect symbiotic relationship that can be formed with a larger company when you're a small company because you can do things they can do a lot faster than they can, right?
Yeah.
And so you can
Yeah.
leverage their significant marketing dollars to identify leads that they can pre-qualify and feed you. You can close the leads, execute on the work that needs to be done, and you guys find a way to split the revenue. It's ideal partnership arrangement. So
Absolutely.
with Dell, we had an opportunity to because I was making friends with a lot of people at a very large school district. I
Mhm.
found out that they were about to release a request for a proposal to basically service their computer needs, and
Mhm.
so I found out when the RFP was going to hit the street. I reached out to Dell and said, "Hey, there's an RFP about to be released, to service the school district. I'd like to partner with you guys on it." And I had strategically met pretty much all of the senior leadership at the school district, and so one of the things that I knew was that in their decision to award the contract, they were looking for a large company that was going to partner with smaller local businesses because they wanted
Yes.
the dollars to stay in the local community, right? And so I approached Dell, and after several weeks of negotiating with them, they ultimately decided to bid with me on this contract, and I was actually able to finagle them bidding exclusively with my company, right? Um,
Another smart move, yeah.
yeah, and once we ended up winning, it was a 5-year, $12.5 million contract in my first year of business with this company, and so when we got the first work order under this contract, I made sure that we completely overperformed, uh,
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
and the school district was so happy with the work we did. The next meeting we had, where we were in the room with Dell and the school district was so over the top complimenting us. I mean, they basically told Dell that we were the reason they were in the building, you know,
Yes.
because we were so
Yes.
good at what we
Yes.
did. And what ended up happening was Dell then brought us into, they had a contract with the city. So
Mhm.
now, before we know it, within a year, we were doing work in every single agency in the city through Dell's contract. We didn't even have to bid on this stuff. It was just they just brought us into
Yeah.
a contract, So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and so now so then because you talk about the finance piece. Well, when we'd have an opportunity to do some work, if I at the time, let's say my company had 10 employees and I needed twenty people for this project, well, Dell would lend me 10 people, right?
Yeah.
And they would lend me 10 people and they'd lend me those 10 people at a really good rate to make sure that I made money on the project. Right. And every time did another project, we'd have a similar thing. So now you do a project. I need 10 people on this first project. Well,
Yeah.
but I make a decent amount of money. Well, if I reinvest it back in my company, the next project, maybe I need 10 people again. But now, because I've reinvested the profits from this first project back into my company, I've been able to hire 2 more people. So now I
Yes.
only need to get 8 people from Dell.
Mhm.
And the next project, I only need to get 6 people. The next 4, the next 2. Well, before you know it, I don't need to, you know, get people from Dell for projects. I can do it all on my own.
I'm smiling because that's when that heavy breath starts to kick
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah,
Once
yeah,
they realize, you know what, you don't need us for anything, then all
yeah.
of a sudden, yeah, then maybe you are starting to become a competitor.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yes,
if
yeah,
you in the midst of that, if you have a 5-year contract, there's nothing they can really do on that. And again, at the end of the day, you know, even within a 5-year period, you're more than likely not going to get to the point. I wouldn't have gotten to the point where I'm going to
no,
compete against
no,
Dell.
no,
So
no.
it's still because we were so good at what we did. It just gave them more incentive. No matter every project gave them more incentive to bring us into the next project, right?
Yeah, yeah, I wanna unpack that more because again, I talked about the MBEs, and I intentionally brought that up because I wanted to have this part of the conversation.
Right,
There are a lot of small businesses that will see themselves as small businesses, and they don't think that they have anything that they can offer to the larger businesses, and that's where I think that there's a misstep because smaller business can be more agile. If you think about it like a ship, it's like a speedboat or whatever type of thing that's smaller, it can turn, it can maneuver faster, it can react to what the industry and the expectations of the audience are
right.
in real time.
Yeah,
As opposed to the larger businesses that have stockholders and shareholders and boards and all these other things that they have to consider that they have to get approval from before they can do anything. So
right.
there are advantages to them wanting to be able to work with you.
Yes.
And in those situations, very much what you described, I can think of a lot of different times where I know from city and state jobs that I've worked on, the way in wasn't through the front door, it was through the side door. So
Right.
I used to say, if you shut the door, I'm checking the window. Like,
Yeah,
I want to be able to find out all these other ways. And in some cases, working with the school system, the way to be able to get in was through the PTA.
yeah.
And the PTA had enough power to be able to go to the principal and the people that were making the decisions to say, well, this is what we want. And
Right, yeah,
because they didn't want to hear the headache from them, they were like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I've lost jobs with that and I've won jobs with that.
yeah,
So it's one of those things of understanding you can probably accomplish more as a small business than some of the larger ones
yeah,
because people are looking for a story. And it goes back to what you were saying with the story. If you are a story of a local business, sometimes people need good press.
yeah,
We know what happens when people are looking at the larger companies. Normally, when people see larger companies, they think, "Okay, well, you're the big company, you're the big bad person that doesn't think about the actual person." There's the chain stores that ruin small businesses and things like that. But if you can figure out ways to be able to partner and leverage their weak spots
yeah,
and use that to your strength to be able to say, well, here's where you have blind spots, here's where I have blind spots. If we can
yeah,
find a way to be able to make that align, then you turn something where they're a competitor into it being a strategic partnership. And I think what you described is very much that. You
yeah,
had the relationship that they weren't going to be able to get because that education a department or a schools district or what have you wanted to be able to have a good story to be able to attach to it.
yeah,
And sometimes that a story that they can attach to it is being able to say, we kept that money in the community.
yeah,
So they weren't going to be able to get that, but you had it and you were able to have that conversation with them
right,
that allowed them to be able to get in and do something. And then you leveraged their ability of being massive to be able to say, well, send me 10 people.
yeah,
So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I want people to think about the fact that it doesn't matter the size of the business. What matters is how well you leverage your abilities.
yeah,
And if you think about how you leverage your abilities, it allows you to be able to get into some of these rooms and be able to have conversations that they can't have.
right,
And once you start using that, then that gets you a foot in the door to be able to have these conversations with the larger businesses. And it's really just so much of it is it goes back to, like you said, there's common sense, there's good sense, and then there's business sense.
yeah,
If you can present something that's good business sense, they're not worried about whether you're a competitor or not. They're looking at the money that they're going to be able to make and say, we'll deal with that later.
yeah,
So don't look at somebody as, oh, well, they're a competitor. Look at them as a potential strategic partnership. If you know where you start and stop and you know where they start and stop, if you know that you can kind of fill in blanks that they can't fill in, it's worth having a conversation with them.
yeah.
And
Well,
it's looking at things like that that will make a big difference.
yeah,